And the government's being criticised today for not doing enough to tackle fraud. Financial crime costs around £16 billion a year, or just over £650 per household. And a government review has said that the harm caused by fraud is second only to drug trafficking. But a charity says a lack of funding means the government is failing to protect people. Well, Jonathan Fisher is a QC at McGrigor's law firm and is also on the fraud advisory panel. Is it a simple case of not enough money being put in?
It's not quite as simple as that. Certainly there's a major problem with lack of funding. There's no question about that, and the government fraud review itself recognises that there needs to be a massive injection in terms of prioritising fraud and the funding of the investigation and prosecution of fraud.
I suppose when people hear about fraud, it doesn't really capture the general public's imagination in the same way that murders or robberies might do. So is that why, do you think, the government isn't prioritising it?
Well, that's certainly part of it. Of course, it's completely wrong to say that, because fraud hits everybody in the pocket. If you have an insurance policy, you will be paying more for it because of the problem of insurance fraud. If you've suffered as a result of a fraud, you will have lost your savings, you may have lost your retirement savings, and you may even have lost your job. So fraud is undoubtedly a very serious problem.
A common thing that is often said about fraud, particularly ID fraud, when you speak to members of the public that are directly affected, is that they tell us that when they go to the police don't want to know, they don't want to investigate. Now, why is that?
Well, that is right, and the reason is because the police are not prioritising it. The government review body itself recognises that there are now only 400 dedicated fraud officers around the country. That is a significant reduction in the number previously, and the police just don't have the resources to deal with these problems.
So we're talking that the solution is basically throw some money at it.
Primarily, there are other issues. For example, you have to look at the legal framework in which the police and, for example, the Serious Fraud Office have to investigate, because there is a problem in the sense that they have to look at so many different aspects of fraud, and there's a difficulty with them concentrating on the most heinous parts of a fraud, and that causes difficulty as well.
Is there anything else that needs to be done apart from money that might not cost the taxpayer more money or mean money being diverted?
Yes, I mean, we certainly see the need for some legislative change. We would like the prosecuting and investigating bodies to have the ability to focus narrowly on a particular issue which would enable them to bring the most serious part of a fraud to court. That's certainly right, and we do not believe that the future lies going down the road of a private public funding initiative, which we think is wrong in principle, nor for that matter do we think that the abandonment of jury trial in this area is going to make any difference at all.
Jonathan Fisher, thank you. So the government still, until it brings in more money on fraud, today's report says fraud is not going to be a priority and still going to be a huge problem.